TrekProfiles Podcast, Episode 22, recorded March 2019. This is the Trek Profiles Podcast, where each episode we sit down with a Star Trek fan, we hear their story, and we try to figure out why we all love Star Trek so much. I'm John, your intrepid host of this whole enterprise, and I welcome you to this, the Trek Profiles Podcast, Episode 22. If you wish to get in touch with us, you can reach us at feedback@trekprofiles.com or on Facebook or Twitter at TrekProfiles. If you wish to leave us a voicemail, you may do that at our automated voicemail line at 609-512-LLAP or 609-512-5527. And if you want to leave a message on our website, you may do that as well at TricorderTransmissions.com. Warning! As we record this, we are in the midst of Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, so all previous Trek content up to and including that point may be discussed on this episode. You have been warned, human. As always, my trusty sidekick and co-host is the fabulously fun, forever forthright, yet never foolhardy, M5 Multitronic Unit.
The M5 awaits commands.
M5, let's see the news.
Information posted.
This show is a part of the Tricorder Transmissions podcast network. We've got so many great shows on the network, and really the most common thing besides Star Trek about all the shows on our network is that they're community focused. They're about the fandom and the people in it. So go check out the TricorderTransmissions.com and listen to some of our other shows. I guarantee you're going to find something you like. And if you do that and you find you want to support the network, you may do that on Patreon at www.patreon.com/the TricorderTransmissions. Support will get you all kinds of special content, extended and uncut episodes, plus there are some tiers with some extra benefits and other cool things as well, so go and check those out. There are other ways to support the show and the network as well. Sharing the show on your social medias and also giving us a review on whatever platform you listen to us on would be incredibly helpful, and we would appreciate that so much. Okay, let's talk about Kobayashi Maru feedback. These are from episode 20 with Janae Fowler. Who is the snazzier dresser, Neelix or Quark? Quark was the selection of Janae, and Quark won the poll on Twitter by 67 to 33%. Personally, I thought Neelix was much more colorful in his sartorial choices, but so be it. Who makes the better omelets, Will or Thomas Riker? Will won by 68 to 32%. My guest had selected Will, so I guess everyone is in agreement there. Next question, tea Earl Grey hot or Ractigino? My guest selected the tea, but all of you selected the Ractigino by 53 to 47%. Which is the worst affliction, the Teplin Blight from Deep Space Nine or the Phage from Voyager? My guest selected the Phage, and so did all of you in a stunning victory for the Delta Quadrant by 86 to 14%. And finally, Damjot with the Nausicaans or Tsunkatse with the Norcadians. My guest selected Tsunkatse, but all of you said Damjot human. Human play Damjot by 70 to 30%. As always, after each episode is released, I post these questions in Twitter, so follow me there at Trek Profiles and you can have your say on this episode's questions. That's it for announcements, news, and weather. M5, run the show. His favorite character is Elam Garak. His favorite alien is Wayun the Vorta. His favorite race is the Trill, especially the Join Trill. His favorite ship is that flying Roomba, the USS Defiant from Deep Space Nine. He's from Southeast England in the United Kingdom, Earth in Sector 001. It's Rob Chapman. Welcome, Rob, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Rob, are you a Star Trek fan?
Absolutely. I'm a huge Star Trek fan.
When did you first realize you were a Star Trek fan?
Probably around the age I went to secondary school, which I guess is high school in the US, so around 11 or 12. Yeah, so me and my dad used to watch DS9 and Voyager a lot. So I think that was the point at which I realised I was a Star Trek fan.
So you started with Deep Space Nine. That was the first Star Trek that you saw?
I mean, I'd seen a few episodes of TNG, but I wasn't really paying attention to them. It was DS9, probably a couple of seasons in when I started properly watching Star Trek. Yeah, so Voyager was the first one I watched all the way through religiously. Yeah.
What's the first episode in any of the series that you have the clearest recollection of watching?
Well, that's a good question. Probably, it's probably not the first episode I watched, but it's got to be something to do with the Dominion War arc. So probably one of the, I think when DS9 was captured by the Dominion. I think that, I can't remember the name of the episode, but that episode, I really clearly remember watching that with my dad and being really excited.
Now, you'd said that Voyager was the first one you'd watched all the way through.
Yes.
So as we sit here and record this in 2019, have you seen all 700 and something hours of Star Trek?
I haven't, no.
Oh, a shocking admission.
I know, blasphemer. I've seen almost all of it. The only series I haven't seen any of is the animated series. And I've seen season 1 of the original series and then a few odd episodes here and there. So I haven't completed the original series and I've seen nothing of the animated series.
So are you rewatching it or are you just going to kind of let it sit for now?
So I've started a TOS, I was going to say rewatch, but it's not a rewatch, a watch through, because I haven't watched it all through before. So I'm almost at the end of season 1 of TOS, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would, because I've grown up with DS9, Voyager, special effects, and, looks really interesting. I assumed that the original series would put me off a little bit because it looked a bit dated, but that's not been the case at all. I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed the writing, the storytelling. It's been good.
And are you watching the remastered ones or the original effects versions? Do you know?
I don't know. I mean, it's on Netflix, so I imagine it probably would be the remastered one, but I wouldn't know. Is it obvious which one you're watching?
It is certainly evident in some of the episodes. I'm particularly thinking about the Doomsday Machine. Okay. I don't know if have you seen that one with the giant cigar-shaped device?
Yeah, a long time ago, but I have seen that one.
Yeah, if that's one where it's really obvious. Also, the Ultimate Computer, where the Enterprise fights off 4 other Federation starships in a drill in a battle simulation.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it's really obvious in that one.
Oh, okay.
Because in the original series, obviously back in the 60s, they didn't have the ability to really do much with having the Enterprise fight off 4 other starships. Today you can do anything you can imagine, right? But back then, I believe, I'm going on memory here, but I believe they actually used the plastic model kits that were commercially for sale that you could go to like your local model shop and buy. That's actually what they used to get 4 of them on one screen. So it's very obvious.
Yeah.
On the Blu-rays, you can actually switch between the two, and you can see the original and the updated. So and there's one scene in one episode. I don't remember which particular episode it is. So this is not a spoiler because I can't even remember what the context was. But there's an episode where the Enterprise has to drop some kind of drones or some kind of devices. And you actually see like a little hatch open in the bottom of the secondary hull and like little things are coming out. That's clearly computer. That is not something they would have had the ability to do. In the original show. So I think that those remasters were really wonderful in that they honor the original in a lot of ways without going overboard.
Yes. Yeah. I'll have to go back and look for the difference. And that'd be interesting to see.
It's worth a comparison. And what's interesting to me is every time I watch it, I'm always reminded of the Star Wars films and how they sort of did a little bit of Stalinist revisionism. And, like today, you cannot buy the version of Star Wars that was in the theaters in the 70s. It's just not available. They don't want it. You can't get it.
Yeah.
Because Lucas didn't want it that way. And so he went back and changed some things, which is kind of a political hot button for a lot of Star Wars fans. But I'm interested to see how you were consuming it because I do think it's a better introduction if you've not seen it to watch those remasters. But if any of our listeners out there have a thought on that, go ahead and tweet at me or send me email, feedback@TrekProfiles.com. So you're watching it on Netflix. Are you watching it on the big screen or on your phone or a tablet or what?
A combination of I watch it on my TV and sometimes I watch it on my phone. So on a small smartphone device. So it's, yeah, kind of half and half, really.
So I'm like you in that I'm doing a Voyager watch through.
Yes.
I gave up on Voyager in original broadcast at a certain point because there was an episode that got me mad and I stopped watching it. So when I'm watching the episodes, the only thing I know about the episode is the 2-sentence summary that, because I'm watching on Amazon, that Amazon gives me. So I just see that 2-sentence. I don't look at any of the supplementary material. I don't look at Memory Alpha. I don't look at what other people have said about the episode because I'm trying to be as fresh as possible.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you do that with your watch? Are you trying to stay relatively fresh with it, or do you see what other people are saying, or read the wiki pages, or what?
With the original series, yeah, I'm not really looking at online at anything or looking at what people say. So yeah, I mean, it's quite bizarre because I know we've got Discovery now, so there is new Trek. But it was weird at first watching Star Trek that I hadn't seen before because all the others I've watched through so many times. It was weird watching Star Trek that, yeah, I had no idea what was going to happen or where it was going to go. So it's quite exciting.
It's actually interesting that you bring up this whole idea of doing a watch through because just like I said, I'm sort of in the same boat, but with Voyager. And while new Discovery is happening and we have, new Star Trek, at the same time, there's plenty of new to me Star Trek to watch. And so having both at the same time has been really interesting for me because I'm able to compare and contrast Discovery and how I feel about it versus Voyager, which again is new to me in many ways. So, it's not like I've lived with those episodes for 20 years. They're very much new to me. And there's some I literally had no knowledge of. I mean, even the episode title I'd never even heard of, much less the episode itself. So it's interesting for me to compare and contrast. Do you find yourself doing that, comparing sort of the TOS episodes and these Discovery episodes and sort of, because they're all new to you at the same time?
Especially because I've literally watched yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah, no, Friday. I watched the latest episode of Discovery, which was with Pike on and the Telosians. So that was really interesting to have watched not that long ago, The Cage, and to then see that on Discovery as well, and see the difference in everything really, like to the actors, to the costumes and makeup. Yeah, so there is sometimes I do. You can't help but compare. Yeah, so I think that's natural to do that. But I even if the special effects might not be as good or the costumes might be a bit lame sometimes, I think that adds to the feeling of it. It's quite cute in a way. It's the costumes might be a bit rubbish, and I'm thinking of that. I can't remember what episode it is where Spock's holding. It looks like it's a dog with this most stupid costume that's meant to make it.
Oh, right, yeah. That's a famous meme. I mean, people love to post that picture of him holding that ridiculous little dog, like with a unicorn horn on it or something.
So yeah, you can't really compare that to anything. Like looking at Discovery, I mean, the special effects are absolutely amazing, like film quality. So yeah.
How do I phrase this? I don't want to. This is going to sound critical, and I don't mean it to sound critical because it's not a criticism. It's just a reality of television. One of the things I feel that is a challenge for any kind of special effects kind of TV, marquee television in 2019. And I'm thinking of Game of Thrones, Discovery, any show like that versus some sort of family drama, which you can have in 2019 without a lot of special effects. But any show that sort of has a special effects component in 2019, I feel that there's a trap of trying to rely on that to carry an episode. When in the original Trek, they didn't have that. They all they had was story.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah,
and
there is something
not a
to be said about that.
but
Yeah, no, there is definitely something to be said about that. That the original series, and I suppose even to a certain extent, TNG and DS9 didn't have the same level of technology that the writers, producers, directors have these days. I mean, there is because there have been episodes of Discovery where I didn't think the writing was fantastic. It was, it's good, but it wasn't fantastic. But you are kind of bowled over by the ships and the special effects and the amazing costumes, and that can carry it through sometimes. But that's not to say that I dislike any episode of Discovery because they are all amazing.
Right,
yeah,
right. No, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, there definitely is an element of that, I think. Yeah, I'd agree.
This thought was actually spurred on because I was listening to an interview with a historian, and he was talking about what the future may hold for the study of history. And what he was actually referring to is the fact that when we go back in history and we look at, say, the writings of the Romans, what has come down to us in history is only like what the quote unquote most important or most famous Romans had written down, because only that was deemed worthy of preservation, right? And that's why when you go to a place like the ruins of Pompeii, right, and we have the vandalism and graffiti, that's really interesting for historians because that's like regular people doing that stuff. And almost none of that has come down through history except by accident.
Yeah.
Whereas in 500 years, you know, they're going to be able to see what I ate for lunch on a Tuesday because I took a photo of it and, you know, put it on Bookface or something like that, you know? So they have the ability to look at everything if they wanted to, right? And look at things in minutia. And the same thing I think is true in TV is that they have the ability to do so much more that sometimes I think they feel pressured to do so much more, you know? And it's like, well, you can, but, you know, I feel that those things always have to serve the interest of story, you know? And I think it's a temptation for all marquee television to get sucked into that. It's like, oh man, we can do cool explosions.
Definitely, yeah.
So you mentioned the animated series. Are you going to give that one a go too?
I haven't thought about it, but I probably will at some point. I'm taking my time with the original series, so I think that's going to take a while. So I keep having breaks and pauses to, obviously, you know, to watch Discovery, and that's probably only going to get worse when more content comes out. So I'm sure I will, but not yet. Although I have heard,
you're right. Go ahead.
I was going to say I have heard mixed reviews. Some people either love it and love its quirkiness, and others don't consider it Star Trek whatsoever. So, that'd be interesting when I finally do watch it.
Well, you know, the one thing I can say about the animated series, and this is what I've said to other people before, actually, I'll say two things. First is that there's a few episodes which really are quite good. And I think Yesteryear is one. The follow-on to the Tribbles episode is really good. More Tribbles, More Trouble, I think it is quite good. But the other thing I'll say is that because it was animated, they had the ability to do stuff they never could have gotten away with on the show.
Right. Okay.
On the live action show.
Yeah.
Right. So you have Lieutenant Eric's who has 3 arms.
Yes.
And you have Lieutenant Maress, like the cat officer.
Okay.
You know, with cat paws for feet and a tail. You know, you can't really do that sort of stuff on the live action show. So that was kind of cool. So
yeah,
it's definitely I think definitely worth checking out for sure. So you began watching Star Trek with your dad?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. I started watching DS9 with my dad back when I was about 11 or 12. So I have quite fond memories of us, you know, sitting down, having dinner, watching the latest episode of DS9 as it was airing, talking about it, being excited about it, and even my stepmom would watch it, and she had zero interest in that sort of thing, but she watched it because she had a bit of a thing for Avery Brooks, so she watched it. I have quite fond memories of that, of sitting down and watching it with my dad. It was a nice thing we had, together. 'Cause, you know, he's really into football. I have zero interest in that, so there's not many things we had in common, but that was one thing we both really enjoyed. So that was nice.
Do you think that the content matter in Discovery limits its ability to be used in a family setting, like how you were introduced to Star Trek?
I don't think so. I mean, in what sense do you mean?
Well, my son is 10,
right? And
when Star Trek Discovery is on, I'm going to go somewhere and watch it by myself. I'm not going to watch it with him.
Yeah.
I just don't think I as a parent don't feel it's appropriate for a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Whereas I would not bat an eye at watching any sort of TOS or any of the 90s Trek with him. And there's some things we might have to talk about, but I just am a little cautious with Discovery. But I don't know if that's just me or if that's something that other people are thinking about too.
I can imagine that's, if you know, I'm not a parent, but I imagine that's probably the case for some people. I mean, you know, you've got the dreaded F-bomb that was that was dropped in, that you wouldn't necessarily. Well, I don't think we got that in any other series. So I can imagine parents wouldn't necessarily be comfortable with their children hearing that. Yeah, I mean, when I think back to it, I mean, there were some. I guess as a child, I didn't really necessarily understand a lot of the things I was watching, but there were some really big themes, some really complex issues that were being, that were shown on DS9. I think, if I think of them now, watching them now, and how I understand them, I probably wouldn't have realised that as a child. And there's things like there's the suffering of the Bajorans and the torture and exploitation of an entire race and its links, to its parallels to World War II and the Holocaust and that kind of thing. But obviously, I wouldn't have necessarily understood that as a child. So I guess it was a bit more disguised back then. As a child, I was just probably seeing the pretty ships and the explosions and
yeah, well, there's different parts of it that are accessible at different parts of your life, I think. And we'll talk about an episode a little bit later that I think is a good example of that. So I see you have a cool Enterprise shirt on there with lots of different enterprises. Are you a T-shirt collector of Star Trek T-shirts? I
have a few. So I don't, when I go to conventions, not that I've been to a huge amount, but I don't tend to cosplay. Not that I have anything against it. I'd really like to, but I don't really have the confidence or the skill level to cosplay. So I often get T-shirts and things like that to wear at the convention. And what I'm wearing now is one of the ones I wore to a convention last year. So yeah, I have a few. I have this one with several of the ships. I have one with like a silhouette of the Defiant, because that's one of my favourite ships. I have a cool one of the Cardassian Union emblem, which is quite cool.
Nice.
Yeah, so I've got a few. Yeah.
Is that the extent of your collecting habits, or do you collect other things Trek related as well?
So I don't have a massive collection, and I don't necessarily collect religiously, but I have a few of the Eagle Moss starships. I really like those; they're cool, and I can slowly see myself becoming a bit of a collector with those. I can't help myself when I'm at a convention buying. I'll buy one, So I can see that collection slowly growing over the years. So yeah, I really like those. I've got a few of those. I've got some of the Fansets pins. I really like those. Have I got anything else? I've got a few random things like figurines and things like that. So I've got a few things, but not masses.
Well, you said that the Defiant is your favorite ship, so I have to ask if you have the Eagle Moss Defiant.
Of course. That was... Actually, it wasn't the first one I bought. The first one I bought was the Enterprise D. But if the Defiant was there, I would have chose it. There wasn't much choice when I bought my first model. So if the Defiant was there, I totally would have bought that. Defiant was the second one I bought. So yeah, I've got the Defiant model, and I've got you can get the extra large versions. So I've got an extra large version of Voyager, which is really cool.
Does it have articulating warp nacelles?
It doesn't, no, sadly. Although my Enterprise D model now separates because I broke it.
So, but that was not intentional. That was not by design. No. Oh no! And given the design of the poor thing, I can't imagine that saucer is easy to balance on there. I imagine you'd have to glue it pretty hard to keep it.
Actually, no, it fit. It almost seems like it's meant to detach. I mean, it isn't, because it slots back in quite nicely. So it's now it has that sort of separation. So not intended, but it's cool.
So you'd mentioned that you'd been to a convention. Are you a routine convention goer?
I wasn't in the past, but I'm fast becoming one. So the first convention I went to was way back in 2003. And I think it was a Christmas present from my dad and my stepmom. They bought me, myself and a friend, tickets to go and see this Star Trek convention in London. And that was the first time I'd been to one. So I met Kate Mulgrew, Alexander Stig, Chase Masterson, and that was really cool. And then I had a long pause.
What was the highlight of your first convention? The one thing that was tip top for you?
Probably, I mean, I am a big Janeway fan, so I really enjoyed her talk. But it was probably, because it was more personal, it was probably talking with Chase Masterson. So it was quite a small convention. So there was a small room with like vendors and actors. And I was walking around with my friend, and I think she probably took pity on us because she could see we were, we didn't really know what to do, or we didn't, we were a bit shy, so we weren't talking to people. And she just came up to us and started chatting to us and saying some really nice things and, asking us questions. And then she gave me a free autograph, which was really sweet. She was really nice. So that sticks out in my mind as a really, really fond memory.
Oh, it's wonderful. And that's unusual too, for the celebrities to come up to you, right? That's pretty rare. So that's awesome.
Yeah. No, it was really good.
All right. And then it was, you were saying it was a long time before you went back to another one?
Yeah. So then I had a very long pause when I finished my secondary school education, went to university, and then got a job. And then the next convention I went to, the next Star Trek convention I went to, was actually last year. That's the second one I've been to.
Was that Destination?
It was, yeah, Destination Star Trek in Birmingham. And I've totally caught the convention bug now. I can see myself going. I've already booked my annual leave from work to go this year, even though we're only in March and it's in that Destination Star Trek's in October. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, I went to Destination Star Trek last year, and it was. I was going to go the year before, but nerves kind of got the better of me. I had this idea in my head that it would be horrendous. I'd walk around. I'd have no one to talk to. I'd feel silly. And it just wouldn't be a pleasant experience. And I was so totally wrong. I wish I'd gone that year. So yeah, when I went last year, I did have those feelings, but I think because I'd interacted with people more on Twitter, and I'd arranged to meet up with people. It was just such a brilliant experience. Even though I met up with people that I know on Twitter, but I didn't go with anyone I'd actually, I'd met before. So I was on my own in that sense, but you're not on your own when you go to a Star Trek convention if you're a Star Trek fan. There's, people are so friendly and willing to talk, and you just strike up conversations in queues. It was awesome. And meeting up with people that I chat to on Twitter. And I never thought people were coming up to me and saying, oh, are you Trekkie Rob on Twitter? And I was like, yeah, like how on earth do you know me? Like, it's like, I'm no one. How do you know me? And I was doing the same to people as well. So it was great to meet up with people, and I feel like I've made some lifelong friends, even just from that one convention. So yeah, if like me, you haven't been to Star Trek convention and you're a bit nervous or anxious, reach out to people on Twitter or social media and just take the plunge, because you aren't on your own. It's such a brilliant experience. It was probably the best thing I did last year. It was an amazing time.
Nobody goes to a Star Trek convention because they hate Star Trek and hate Star Trek fans, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's kind of hard to believe, right? But it really is a place where, you get together and everyone is like you. They're there because they love it.
Yeah, it is like, it sounds really cheesy and corny, but it is like your home, because these are my people, that they get me, they're into the same sort of things that I'm into, and, they're geeky like me. So yeah, it's absolutely, it was great. Yeah.
Now, I know a little bit of UK geography. I've been there once. And if I recall correctly, Birmingham is quite a ways from where you are. So I imagine you had to fly up or take a train or something, or drive up. Yes, yeah, I took the train up. Yeah. So you were staying in a hotel, and you were doing the whole experience. You weren't like going for a day commute or anything like that. Oh no, I was there for the full 3 days, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I actually with a few people,
I'm quite friendly with on Twitter, we got like an Airbnb place together to try and save money because the hotels are crazy expensive. So we saved quite a bit of money that way, so we could spend it on autographs and photo shoots.
Oh, it's funny. Yeah, I was in London actually the summer 2 summers ago, and we did an Airbnb, and it was delightful. It was absolutely the best thing we could have done. There was a little Tesco and a Waitrose that was right down the block. We could pick up our stuff and just cook, and it was fantastic. It was especially definitely the way to go.
London hotel prices are really expensive. They can be. So Airbnb is probably a good option.
Oh yeah, it worked out really well for us. I'm not sure if I would recommend it for anybody coming to Las Vegas because there's been some problems here with Airbnb as far as depending on which exact part of the city that you're in. So if any listeners out there are thinking about doing that for Vegas, it can be problematic, and you have to be really careful because whether you're in county or city territory, which is not something that's easily apparent to an outsider, and even for people who live here, it can be difficult to know if you're in the county or the city. There can be some problems. So I wouldn't recommend it. But by the way, if anybody wants... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's funny you should say that, actually, because I'd completely forgotten until you mentioned that. One of my friends who we stayed at a place with when I went to the DST last year, we'd booked a place quite a few months in advance, and about a week and a half before the convention, it completely fell through. We got an email saying, the person who owns the property it's not able to be stayed in anymore. They've taken it off of the site, so you can't stay there. You can have your refund, but you can't stay there. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able, there's going to be nothing left at this, this short notice. But thank God there was. My friend managed to find a place, which worked out absolutely fine. But it was a panic moment.
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
so it's plan ahead.
Yeah, you always got to plan ahead. And for any listeners out there, another show on the Tricorder Transmissions network is our Shore Leave podcast. And they had a whole series of episodes devoted to covering Destination Star Trek in Birmingham last year. So I'd recommend those episodes to any listeners who want a much deeper dive into the logistics of the convention and all of that. So, Rob, have you ever thought of coming to the big one here in Vegas?
Yeah, I would love to. I haven't ruled it out this year, but I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure because I'm currently in the process of selling my house and moving. So I'm not sure what my financial situation is going to be like in the next few months of this year. But I haven't ruled it out. I definitely I will. It's just whether I go this year or possibly next year. Yeah, but it's committing quite a large chunk of money to obviously the flights. But I would absolutely love to go. And I know some people that I met at DST who live in the UK are going to Star Trek Las Vegas. So I'm not sure yet. I haven't made the decision, but I really, really want to because it looks amazing. And it's interesting because from what I can tell from people online that have been to Star Trek Las Vegas, it's quite different than the setup of Destination Star Trek in the UK. But I think you probably have it better in the sense that, as far as I understand, you buy a ticket that tells you where you can sit in the talks. Is that right?
For certain levels of tickets. So, and you can go to the Creation website and actually look at it. But if you buy the top tier ticket, you get an assigned seat that's up at the front. And then there's, you go further back. Like there's the gold that's in the first several rows. And then behind that is the captain's chair. And then behind that, there's the copper. And then behind that, there's general admission. That's where, those are not assigned. So if you have a GA ticket, you just walk in and sit in one of those seats. You can pick any one you want that doesn't have a seat label on it.
And so those general admission ones, they're free. Anyone can, you don't have to pay to get into that talk.
Oh no, you still have to buy a ticket.
Oh, you still have to buy, yeah.
But you don't get an assigned seat.
But do you so you pay for the ticket to get into Star Trek Las Vegas, but you have to pay separately to get into that talk?
No. No, all talks are included. All the talks are included. Everything, there are some add-ons like the photo ops and the signatures. Those are, optional. There's a few extra parties you can pay for, like the gala, which is on Saturday night, may or may not be included. It's included in the top tier tickets, but not at the lower tier tickets, but you can buy it as an add-on. But everything in the main theater is pretty much open except for like the gala, which is that one special event at night. I could be wrong about that, but the majority of the convention is open. And the one of the bigger things that Creation does promise in Vegas is that there's nothing that's oversold. So there is a seat, even if it's not an assigned seat, for everybody. So if literally every single person who bought a ticket went into the main theater, everybody could sit down.
Right, I see. See, that isn't the case with Destination Star Trek. There's 3 stages, and 2 of them are free. But all the talks on the 3rd stage you have to pay to get into, separately from paying to get into into Destination Star Trek. So it's a bit different with the UK and the US one. But yeah, it's still awesome. I'd pay whatever. So
yeah, from what I understand, that's actually more typical of most conventions. Is how you describe it. This is something that Creation does, and they consider it their X factor. That they don't oversell. There's a guaranteed seat, even it may not be an assigned particular seat based on the level of ticket, but everybody gets to sit down. You get access to the main theater for everything, the secondary theater for everything. You can walk the hallway and do they have all these like little things in the hallway you can do, like a Borg regeneration chamber, and I think they had an agonizer booth last year. You can go, stand in and get your picture taken in. They have a Tribble exhibit every year, and then some other crazy things that they do. It's not all inclusive, but I would say that Star Trek Las Vegas is mostly inclusive.
Right.
So,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely worth it. Besides, we, especially for you, Rob, I can tell you as a resident of Las Vegas, there's an awful lot of British people who come to visit here. So you probably feel right at home. So you'd mentioned that you're not much of a cosplayer. And do you own any Star Trek uniforms at all?
I don't. No, not yet. I haven't quite got the confidence to pull that off. And also, those things they look really tight. I don't think it would be very flattering on me. But no, I haven't got any uniforms or anything like that. I mean, no, at the moment it's just T-shirts, Star Trek themed T-shirts. But maybe one day. I mean, there were some amazing cosplayers at Destination Star Trek last year. There was this amazing Vorta. I mean, the makeup looked like it could have been on the show. It was really impressive. I remember there was a simulated Andorian with these antennae that moved. Like, I don't know how they must have had some sort of device that that made them move. That was really cool. There was some really good cosplayers there. So it's
if you could if money were not an issue for you and the size of the costumes was not an issue for you, if you could have your pick of any uniform from Star Trek, and you could buy one of them, what would it be?
Ooh. I think it would probably be the
and we're talking dress uniforms, standard uniforms, away team outfits, Spock's EVA suit from the motion picture, it's all in play.
I think it would probably be the First Contact later DS9 uniform. I really like that. That's one of my favorites. I'd probably get that.
Which color?
I'd never thought of that. Probably.
Right, we're asking the hard questions here on Trek Profiles. You don't get to come on this show and get an easy pass.
Probably blue, I think. Yeah, I see myself as a more science medical. So yeah, I'd probably go for the blue.
Oh, fair enough. There's no wrong answers, man. It's whatever you want. So good. So you were very insistent with me, Rob. You kept emailing me and asking to be on the show. So I want to put the question to you. Why did you feel so compelled to want to be a guest on Trek Profiles? I
remember when the Tricorder Transmissions and yourself first announced that, the Trek Profiles was starting. I remember thinking at the time, that's such a good idea for a podcast. I wish I'd thought of that. I love the idea of, because there are so many Star Trek podcasts out there that, dissect episodes or, characters. And, I love that, don't get me wrong. But it's such a unique idea to turn it around and have it about us, the people that watch it, and to have it about our own stories. So it's quite personal, how Star Trek has influenced you, why it's important, what do you appreciate about it. So it's you're still talking about all those things you'd get in a regular Star Trek podcast, like the episodes, the characters, the films, but you're also talking about you and your own experience. And it's each episode is always going to be so different because you've got different people with different experiences and different lives. So yeah, that's. And as soon as I heard about the Trek Profiles podcast, I instantly loved it because it's such a great idea. So I always knew I wanted to come on. But I was thinking, you always had this thought, I'm sure there's loads of people that want to go on, and there's people far more interesting than me. So I was umming and ahhing for a long time, and I thought, no, I'm just going to email in and say I'd like to be on.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's always my advice to people is, I get some people who, they send me a Twitter DM or they send me an email and hey, can I be on the show? Or just, put me on your show. And I think, well, I get a lot of that.
Yeah.
So let me just put this advice out there to anybody who's listening, right? If you have an interesting Star Trek story to tell, let me know that you have a story and let me know what it is. But just saying, can I be on your show? I get a lot of that. So that's
I can imagine.
Usually that's not going to get you to the top of the list.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I think then that we should actually turn and actually start talking about some episodes. Rob, what do you say?
That sounds pretty good to me.
So as is my habit, I had the M5 Duotronic unit run out and compile a list of episodes for us to talk about. Now, actually, you have not seen the Ultimate Computer TOS episode.
No, so I haven't.
the M5 is actually from that episode.
Right. Okay.
In a nutshell, what happens is the Enterprise is a test platform for a new ship's computer.
Right.
The M5.
Okay.
And that's the episode. That's not a spoiler. That's just the one sentence thing that you might read in TV Guide. So that's actually where the M5 comes from. And I adopted that for my little show here. So he put together a list of episodes for us to talk about. And I have two lists here. I have a best episode list, and I have a list of episodes the M5 wants me to ask you about. So I want to start, I think, with a TOS episode that is marked as one of the best, and that's City on the Edge of Forever. Why do you think this is the best of Star Trek?
I'm sure that, it's one of the most commonly cited of all Star Trek, let alone just TOS. But for me, it's one reason really why that episode stands out to me. And it's quite a small part of that episode. It's over within, a minute. It's all down to Edith Keeler's speech and how it affected me when I heard that. And it's just so awe-inspiring and hopeful. And I just remember thinking, that's such a positive message. It's that hope for the future. I just love that scene where Edith Keeler gives that speech. It just really impacted me. And I mean, the rest of the episode is fantastic. Obviously, Kirk's willingness to sacrifice, the woman he loves for the good of humanity, that nobility and willing to, sacrifice something that means so much to him. Yeah, I think the message of hope, which is, I think, why Star Trek's important to quite a lot of people, is that episode really captured it for me, that idea of our hopeful future and things improving. And
when people ask me why I like Star Trek or even science fiction more broadly, one of the things I often talk about is that science fiction allows you to tell stories about people that you couldn't tell in other contexts. And when you look at a story like this, there's a little bit of sci-fi sort of tropes in it. You got the medicine that makes the doctor go crazy. You've got the Guardian of Forever. That's, the big stone donut that you jump through. And there's a little bit of effects. There's a romance in it, but all of that really goes to serve this larger story about what is our duty to each other. What is our duty to the future that we're in? And all of these larger issues that you can't tell necessarily in a family drama or in a historical narrative or in any other context, really. And I'm reminded. Have you ever read the short story "The Cold Equations"?
No.
It's a classic sci-fi short story from the 50s.
Okay.
It's another example of this. It's one of my personal favorites. Here's the whole premise. It takes place in the future, of course, and there's space travel, but space travel is incredibly expensive. Right. As it is today, right? It's, fantastically expensive. And so there's no gratuitous space travel. It's not like in Star Trek where they just hop in a shuttle and go places, right? It's if you want to go someplace, it's a lot of money, a lot of expense involved in doing that. And so a ship is going somewhere on a mission of some type, and they discover that a colony is suffering some sort of medical problem, and everyone's going to die if they don't get this antidote or this vaccine. And they dispatch a shuttle to get the vaccine there. So there's a pilot on the shuttle, and he's taking the vaccine to the planet, and he discovers that there's a stowaway on board the shuttle, and he doesn't now have the fuel to get there because the mass calculations for how much fuel they needed were wrong.
Okay. Yep.
And so he just doesn't have the fuel to deliver the vaccine, and all the colonists will die if he doesn't get there. That's the story.
Yeah.
And you're the pilot. What do you do?
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm going to spoil it. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, fast forward here, but for just about 30 seconds. But he ends up putting the girl out the airlock.
Oh, wow.
Because it literally is a matter of, if I don't do this, hundreds of thousands of people will die, because there is no way I can pilot this ship, and there's nothing on this. It's a little shuttle. It's not like some giant ship that has all this extra stuff, and they have exactly enough fuel to get where they're going. And none extra, and it's just that's why it's called the cold equations, right? It's not like the warm and fuzzy equations, right? You literally will not make it, because there's not enough life support and everything else for two people. So, sci-fi allows us to tell those stories. And one of the things I think that's a particular strength of City is that, every single thing in the episode, the romance, the sci-fi, the effects, it's all in service of that larger story.
It's funny because that short story you're describing sounds right up my street, because a lot of my, what I consider to be the best episodes and or my favorite episodes are kind of episodes like that, with big moral dilemmas that that somebody has to make a decision on. I really like episodes like that. So a lot of mine are kind of similar to that sort of premise.
Oh, fantastic. Well, then that, I think, is a good lead into another episode that I think we should talk about, which is Tuvix from Voyager. And this was marked down as one of the best episodes of all Star Trek. Now, I would mark it as probably the most controversial. That's what I would call it. But explain yourself, Mr. Chapman.
It definitely is controversial. Again, it's those big moral decisions that somebody has to take, and in this case it's Janeway, and she gets a lot of flack for the decision she makes. It's just the whole idea of what happens to Tuvok and Neelix and them merging together, and then Janeway having to make this decision about, do I let these two people go, and am I happy to let them go, and for the good of the ship needs, it's the experience that those two people hold, the ship needs that. But in doing that, if I let them, if I don't let them go and bring them back, then I have to essentially kill a life form. It's the whole moral dilemma of that is really, I find it fascinating. You've got Kes feeling conflicted about her feelings for Neelix, and whether she's then betraying him by feeling similar feelings for Tuvix, and it's a really complicated episode. So I don't envy Janeway in the decision that she makes, and it is, I can see why it's controversial, because she does essentially kill a life form, which isn't particularly Star Trek. We don't see that very often, but in a way that's kind of why I like it, because it's uncomfortable. It's not easy watching to. That scene where Tuvix is on the bridge and he's pleading to all of them, don't let her do this. It's uncomfortable watching, but in a good way.
So I'm going to put you in the captain's chair, Rob,
Oh no.
what's your choice?
I think I'd take the coward's way out and resign my commission and make somebody else make the decision. It's just how could you? I don't know how you could do that. How you could justify ending Tuvix's life, because I kind of see where he's coming from. He's here and now. They're not here anymore. It's not his fault that he was created. If I was forced to make a decision, I probably would leave Tuvix where he is, to be honest. So I'd go against Janeway. Yeah.
All right, so I didn't want to influence your answer, but before you gave it, because I think I would agree with you.
Yeah.
As I look at the episode, what I think about is at the same time that this episode is going on, we're in the part of Voyager where they're being harassed on occasion by the Vidians.
Mm-hmm.
And they're bad guys in the show, for the most part. There were some exceptions, because they're harvesting organs from other beings to keep others alive. If what the Vidians are doing is wrong, then also what we're doing with Tuvix is wrong. Right? Oh, I can save 2 people by killing this one person, right? Well, then the Vidians must be the good guys also.
Yeah.
Because by killing, by killing people and harvesting their organs, they're saving the lives of others, right? So that must be permissible in a logical analysis, right?
Yeah.
So I find it very difficult as an episode to watch. And I have to admit, my enjoyment of Voyager took a sharp plunge at the end of that episode because of how it resolved.
I can understand that. I can appreciate that. Yeah, definitely.
You know, there's always the meta level of it, though, like where you know that they're not going to replace the character unless, some other thing happened from outside. So you kind of, know, even if you don't know that they're not going to do that. They're not going to replace the character.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you familiar with a term called sniglets?
No.
This was a comedian, I think, in the 80s. I can't remember how long he was successful with this, but he had this whole comedy bit where he would say there's a sniglet is a word that should be in the dictionary but isn't. And he would give like all sorts of examples, and like one of them was, the name for the black stuff around the rim of the ketchup bottle. There should be a name for that, this kind of stuff. And I always felt like there should be a word for when you're watching some sort of entertainment, and just by the reality of how it's introduced, itself spoils itself. So, for example, if you're watching a movie of some type or a TV show, and you see a major A-list actor in some inconsequential part, you know that they're going to be coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because there's no reason that the major guest star is like being a waiter in that first scene if he's not going to come back later. They would not have brought that person in to serve a drink. Yeah. So you know that something's going to happen. And even though you may know nothing about the show, nothing about the episode, it's now spoiled because the show spoiled itself, right? Because of the casting decision. Yeah. And so when you watch an episode like Tuvix, and I knew going into it that Tuvok and Neelix are there at the, I know that I knew it was going to be resolved before it even happened that way. And I kind of wish I could have, so I wanted kind of a word to describe that when a show was self-spoiling. But even at the time, back in the 90s, when the episode was first run, I suspect that people would have known going into it whether or not Tim Russ and Ethan Phillips were going to be off the show. I don't think it was possible to maintain that suspense.
Because I wonder what that could have been. It could have been played out differently. I can see in my head how Tuvix could have seen how in pain the crew were at the loss of Tuvok and Neelix, and how it was affecting Kes, and how it was having a detrimental effect on Voyager and its journey. I could see him doing the noble thing and sacrificing himself, almost doing what Janeway does, but doing it himself. So he's made the choice rather than being forced. I could see, I wonder how it would have played out if it had ended that way as opposed to the way it did. But yeah, like I say, I like the tough decisions. I like the moral quandaries, those sort of episodes. So that's why I like Tuvix, because it is difficult. It's hard. It's a hard one to watch.
So speaking of quandaries, I was in a quandary the other day because I had to run several diagnostic cycles on the M5 because I thought he was malfunctioning. Because on the best list, I see Macrocosm, which is an episode that seems to be widely mocked among the fandom, and people seem to not like it so much. I thought it was sort of a pleasant diversion, but yet it appears that the M5 thinks that you think this is one of the best episodes of Star Trek. So I have to call on you to explain yourself, Mr. Chapman.
I love Macrocosm. It's such a brilliant episode, simply because Janeway's my favourite captain, so I'm biased in that sense. I mean, maybe it should be more of a favourite episode than a best episode, but I don't know. I'm surprised that people would think it's not a great episode because I love the whole Janeway diehards, in her Starfleet vest with her phaser rifle and the grenade, and I love that. It's just brilliant. It's to see a woman, take on these disgusting insect creatures and save the ship, and she does it all herself. She does the sciencing, she does the action. I love that episode. It's brilliant. And the concept of it with, the crew all incapacitated and it's just her and Neelix at the beginning. I love that episode. It's brilliant.
Okay, fair enough. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, but I had to ask because I like I said, I didn't hate it. I thought it was okay. But then I just saw a lot of reaction where people, oh, that was horrible. It's a terrible episode. I didn't think it was all that bad, but I was certainly surprised to see it on a best of list. But let's talk about an episode that I think a lot of people would agree is certainly a very fine episode, and that's Captive Pursuit from Deep Space Nine. Why is this one of the best of all Star Trek for you?
I think, again, it's the moral quandary that I tend to hone in on episodes. O'Brien has in that helps, the name of the Tosk, that's it, that, he is kind of meant to stay out of it and not interfere, but he puts his career in jeopardy to help this seemingly helpless alien who he thinks is, being persecuted. Again, it's that whole concept of, risking and sacrificing something to help someone in need. And I can't remember the guy who plays Tosk, but he plays him so well. If I was O'Brien, I would do what he does and risk everything to try and help Tosk, because he pulls on all the heartstrings. It's another really, really good episode. Good episode because Cole Meany really, I think he excels in this episode. The acting is really top notch.
Scott McDonald. That's the actor who plays Tosk.
Yes, that's it. The acting in it is just really, really good.
So let me ask you about an episode that I actually had not seen since it was originally broadcast, but I have to admit I really, really enjoyed it when the M5 put it on the list for me, and that was Enterprise, the episode United, one of the later episodes where we get to see the Andorians and the Tellarites and the humans and the Vulcans all working together to build this giant sensor net to capture the evil Romulan ship. Tell me why this is the best of Star Trek.
I think you've summed it up really neatly there. It's just that the idea of these different people, these different races coming together who, have been either in conflicts or at war, or have very different opinions, different cultures, different ways of looking at things. They come together for this, common good, to fight this common enemy. I just love the idea of these people putting aside their differences and working together. And I'm pretty sure I hope it's United, where it's that scene, I think at the end, where you've got Shran and the Tellarite ambassador shaking hands. And
that's in the episode.
That really sticks in my mind of two people, two races that couldn't be further apart in some sense. And I just think that really resonates and relates to the world now. We could use a bit of being united. There seems to be so much, without getting too deep, so much divisiveness and, being separated, and politics tends to divide us and separate us when actually we've got a hell of a lot more in common than we have that separates us. So I like the whole concept of, pardon the pun, being united and working together. And I think humanity needs a bit of that right now.
Well, I think it's especially poignant because earlier in the episode, Talus, the female Andorian, dies. And this is, what was your opinion of the duel between Shran and Archer that takes place in the episode?
Yeah. I think that was really clever of Archer to do that, because he realizes if he does this, he can keep this alliance together. So it's very, not cunning, the wrong sort of word, but just
clever.
Yeah, it's just very clever that he susses out how to keep this alliance going. And it's a great scene. It's a great fight scene. But he realizes that, by honoring Andorian traditions, he can earn Shran's respect, and he can put a close to, if someone killed the person that you loved, you probably wouldn't want to be their ally. So, Archer knows exactly what to do to get Shran on board. And the fact that Shran can look past such a horrific thing, I think shows that, people that have different experiences and that have been enemies can come together for the greater good.
One of the parts of the episode that I thought was really nice, and a really nice acting moment too, was right before the duel. Jeffrey Combs as Shran is quite generous in his own Andorian way to Archer. He tells him before they even fight, I'm going to take your blood to Andoria. I'm going to put it on the wall of heroes, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's very magnanimous. I mean, he's obviously counting his eggs before they're hatched, but in his own way, I think that was a very generous and kind thing in an Andorian sort of way for him to do,
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that whole relationship between Archer and Shran, that, it's kind of on the edge of antagonistic, but they both really respect each other. But Shran can't really bring himself to say sometimes that he respects him. They play off against each other. But,
I think he does. I mean, he wouldn't tell him.
Yeah.
I mean, if he says, I'm going to take your, give you this very honorable thing for dead Andorians, right? And that's pretty big stuff, I would think. I think that's part of it. I just want to say, I completely loved the Andorians and the Tellarite makeup in the episode. It was just really great when I went back to it. And I was like, wow, that looks fantastic. It was just great.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a Discovery episode for us to talk about, my friend. Discovery, Sound of Thunder, visiting Kaminar.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that it? Or is that the Star Wars one?
I know. I was just about to say that. No, it is Kaminar. Yeah. Is it Camino? I think that's right. I always I want to instinctively say Camino, but it's Kaminar.
Right. Okay. So both planets have these long, gangly people that are running around. So, So obviously this episode was quite interesting in a lot of ways. I almost want to challenge that it's premature to put anything from a recent season of Star Trek in the best of, because don't you think it has to settle for a bit?
Yeah, probably. I mean, especially with season 2, it's almost like every new episode trumps the one before, so it's quite hard to, I mean, it probably is a little bit premature to put it on a best of list, but I really enjoyed it for various reasons. I just love the character of Saru is...
Please list your various reasons, because that's why we're here.
Anything that focuses on Saru is up there in my estimations. But the whole concept, the whole idea of him fighting his fear and anxiety and standing up to, his people's long-held beliefs and challenging them, and this predator species that his people are instinctively, terrified of and will go to any lengths to avoid. He stands up to them, and it's almost like he's starting the revolution of his people standing up and challenging the status quo with the Baul, isn't it? Yeah,
The Baul, yeah.
Yeah. So I really liked, Saru doing that, standing up for himself, standing up for his people, and saying, "No, things are going to change now, and this is how they're going to change." And I really enjoyed that.
As we record this, we don't really know what happened after they left the planet. As far as we know, they left them to their own devices. What is your opinion on what's happening on Kaminar right now as we record this? Because we don't know anything past when they left the planet.
So all the Kelpians are now these evolved Kelpians.
Yeah, is there going to be giant Bauls on spits being roasted for dinner, or is there a civil war happening, or is peace and friendship prevail, or what do you think is happening?
I would like to think that Saru's sister is helping to try and facilitate some sort of dialogue between them and to try and bring around about some sort of change, but not to go back to how it was before, with obviously the Baul being the prey species. How that's going to happen, I don't know. It's probably more realistic that there's going to be a lot of Kelpians that are quite angry, and there probably will be a civil war. But I'd like to think that they're going to try and work out their differences and try and find some way to live together. Whether I'm just being naive, I don't know, or optimistic.
We don't know. I just suspect, and this is, if I was a betting person, I'd bet this, we will probably never find out.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever find out. I think that Discovery has a lot of irons in the fire, and I don't think they're going to go back and give us a resolution of this. Even if it's just a sentence in an episode might be all we get, or something like that. But I don't think we're ever going to get an answer. So it's going to be left for us to imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, by the way, I have to point out is a very Star Trek thing to do. I mean, going right back to the original series, if you look at, the apple, the site of paradise, a piece of the action. I mean, this is like a very classic TOS thing, is to totally upset a society, pull the carpet out from underneath every single person on a planet-wide scale, and then be like, "See ya, suckers," and warp off to the next adventure. It's something that always kind of irked me when TOS did it, and I'll be curious to see if we ever get back to it. So let's turn then and talk about some episodes that matter to you personally, Rob. I've got 4 of them I think we should talk about.
Yeah.
And I think what we'll do is I'll take them in order. Let's start with TNG with lessons. So Nella, Darren, Stella, cartography. The moment that a lot of people remember is them playing music in the Jeffries tube on the ship.
Yeah.
Why does this episode matter to you personally?
Yeah, I know. I can imagine there are a lot of people saying, "Really, that episode?" Especially because the whole Crusher Picard thing, and even a lot of people prefer Vash over,
clearly the correct answer.
No, see, I'm Team Darren, but I know I'm in the minority, so that's fine. It's and I apologise in advance if this gets a bit depressing, but the reason this episode is meaningful to me is I rediscovered it during quite a difficult time in my life over the last few years, when my partner at the time, who we've split up now, she was suffering from really quite severely from depression and anxiety, to the point where she'd made repeated attempts on her life.
My goodness.
Yeah, so the reason this episode, it was special to me because I was watching it around that time, but it was also special because I resonated with how Picard felt when Nella Darren, she goes on this away mission to protect. There's this firewall that's coming, or there's this firestorm that's coming towards this colony, and she's part of the away team that has to protect them and build up this wall. And she has to man this equipment that keeps this firewall going. And initially, she doesn't it looks like she possibly has died. And it's how we see Picard react to losing Nella Darren, or him thinking that he's lost her. He just shuts down completely. And there's that scene where he goes to his quarters and shuts the music box with the flute, as if, to symbolize, I don't want to feel again because it was too raw and upsetting, and so I'm just closing my emotions. I don't want to ever have a relationship or anything again because it was too upsetting to have lost someone that meant so much to me. And that's how I felt at the time, when my partner at the time, I thought I was going to lose her. And it was, I felt like that, like, I don't know what to do. It felt like the end of my life. Like, what am I going to... It sent me into a cycle of depression. So I completely got how Picard felt. And also, on a slightly more uplifting side of it, although myself and my ex, we're not together anymore, but we're still on good terms, and we had a really good relationship. And it was how Nella Darren makes Picard feel. You see him almost out of character. Like she injects life into him. The smile that he has on his face when she is in the room, or and there's that really funny scene where he's in a relationship with Nella Darren, and he then goes onto the bridge and asks Riker to go fencing with him, and he kind of jokes with Riker, and you can see Riker's like, is this the same guy? Like, what's happened here? Because she's changed him. She's for the better. She's brought him out of his shell. And that's how I felt about my partner at the time. She brought such, joy and happiness into my life. She was like my Nella Darren. And I mean that in a positive sense, because I love Nella Darren. She's a great character. I think she really matches Picard well. So, yeah, it reminded me how I felt at the time with my relationship, about my ex, and difficult situation with mental health, and how upsetting that can be, and the prospect of losing a partner. And so that's why that episode was really important to me.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm sorry to hear that it was such a tough time for you, Rob. It's a very sad story, and I'm glad you came out on the other side, and everyone came out better for it on the other side. So that's good to hear.
Yeah.
But I think that that's something that a lot of fans of Star Trek can experience, is that they see something in these episodes that reflects something in their own life.
Yeah.
And then they attach to it, right? I mean, we all have episodes like that other people wouldn't necessarily put on a top 10 list of all Star Trek or something like that, but it's something that touches them because of their own experience, and they attach to it, and they recognize something in the episode that means a lot to them, and it's something has a specialness to them that other fans may not have, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I think what's great about Star Trek is we have so much to pick from.
Yeah.
As far as the corpus of material, that there's always something that people can attach to. So then let me ask you about an episode that's quite different in tone. I'll be curious to hear how you explain this one, which is in the cards, Deep Space Nine. It's an episode about a baseball card.
This is very from all the episodes that are quite meaningful to me. A lot of them seem quite dark and sad and somewhat depressing because of how they resonate to me and what happened in my life at the time. But this episode is a bit more uplifting. The idea of this episode, with Jake and Nog, or particularly Jake, wanting to do something good, something for his father, who he realizes is really down and depressed and is having a really hard time, and they want to do something nice for him to help someone in need. And to me, this encapsulates the spirit of Star Trek and Star Trek fandom, of people willing to, and I see it so much on Twitter, people just reaching out to each other as fans and helping each other. And Star Trek fans did that to me, with me, when these things were going on in my life, these difficult things around mental health and my ex, and suicide attempts, and people reached out and asked how I was, and were interested in my life. And asked if they could help. And just the Star Trek community is so kind and generous. Complete strangers willing to do something positive to help their fellow human. And Jake and Nog do this in this episode, and they do it, initially it's only to Sisko, but they inadvertently help the entire crew. You know, they uplift them, and they make such a difference. And I think you see Sisko at the end say that it's like something swept through the station and swept all the cobwebs out, and everyone suddenly feels a bit, their spirits have been lifted. And so that's why I really enjoy this episode, and why it means something to me, because Star Trek and Star Trek fandom has done for me what Jake and Nog did in this episode. They cheer me up, they pick me up, and when things are down, and look out for me, and we all have each other's backs, and that's really important to me.
I've heard so many stories since I started doing the podcast of things exactly like that, where fans are having a difficult time in some way or another, whether it's emotionally, whether it's financially, whether it's with some particular problem in their life, and they end up talking to random Trek fans on the internet, and something wonderful happens. Yeah. Or something better happens, or perhaps nothing happens, but they feel better.
Yeah, exactly.
At the end of the day. Let me ask you about a Voyager episode that's along those same lines, The Void. So here we have the Voyager trapped in this terrible region of space with all these other ships, and they form a little mini federation to try to get through. Why is this episode a big deal for you?
It's very much in the same vein as in the cards in DS9. It's that similar idea of people coming together, strangers, you know, seeing people suffering, having a hard time, working together for the common good, supporting one another. It's very, very similar in that respect. You know, we see Janeway form this alliance. You know, she's in Voyager's in this position where they've got, you know, hardly any food, hardly any energy. They have nothing to spare. But Janeway, I mean, you could say there's a bit of a self-interest there, because she knows by giving she might receive, but she might not. There's a massive risk in that. So it's that generosity of spirit. It ends up giving medical supplies and food to this other ship and this other crew. You know, she could say, well, I'll give you this if you give me that, which we need. But she doesn't. She gives it completely no strings attached. You know, here's this gift of medical supplies and food, compliments of us. You know, she realized, I just love that idea of doing something good for someone else with, you know, there's no hidden agenda. You know, these people could have gone away and Voyager would have never seen them again. But actually, and I think Janeway says this in the episode, that I think she says it to Seven, that sometimes the best way to get help is to give help. And I just think the world would be a much better place if everyone did that. If we all, and I think most Star Trek fans do. If the world was a bit more like Janeway and Voyager in The Void, I think the world would be a better place.
Well, then let me ask you about an episode that I have to admit surprised me to see on this list. And it was a Deep Space Nine, Hard Times. So this is the one where poor Colm Meaney as O'Brien gets 20 years of prison memories implanted into his head. And he has to deal with that, even though no time has passed in the real world. In his head, it was 20 years of being in prison. Certainly a traumatic event. We get a little bit of Miles and Keiko. We get a little bit of Miles and Bashir as he tries to reintegrate himself into Deep Space Nine and into the routine of his daily life. So tell me why this episode is on this list.
So, again, it probably sounds like I'm repeating myself, but it's because of where I was at the time when I'd seen this episode a long time ago, but I rediscovered this episode. I'd watched it quite recently when those difficult things that I described earlier with my partner at the time. And at the time where I watched this, it was my partner was slowly recovering, but then the after effects of caring for someone with quite severe mental health issues impacted on me, and it kind of dragged me down. And I was then in a...
So you were the Keiko.
Yeah, yeah. So much less attractive Keiko. So yeah, caring for a loved one for so long was having quite a detrimental effect on me. I went into a cycle of depression. I found work too stressful and I was signed off work for a long time. I was suffering with anxiety and panic attacks, which I'd never done before. I couldn't see a way out, and I just felt completely hopeless. And in this episode, we see O'Brien feel like that. So I related a lot to him, that he feels utterly hopeless. He has been in this, at least that he's got the memories of being in this prison, of doing this, feeling so incredibly guilty about what he's done to, I think it's Ichar, the cellmate that he's with.
Yeah.
And then the after effects of that is, that he's quite standoffish and cold and is quite aggressive towards his colleagues and his friends. He shuts everyone out. And then finally he almost, he shouts at his young daughter and almost, it looks as if he's going to get up and hit her or something. So all these things happening, he just can't see any point in living anymore. He just feels utterly hopeless, and actually he feels the world would be better without him, and it would be easier if he just wasn't there. And I've been in that place where I have felt like O'Brien when he's in the cargo bay with a phaser to himself, like, I don't want to be here anymore. Life is too difficult. It's too hard. I just want to go. And although that's incredibly horrible and upsetting, what I took away from that episode is that O'Brien gets through it. He comes out the other side. And what I really like is how everyone, all his colleagues and friends, rally around him and try and help him. We have Bashir, from the very beginning when he's in the prison, we've got Ichar, who, he's in this really bleak situation. He's going to be in this prison for 20 odd years, but he's got this stranger who's being kind to him, sharing food, telling him how to get through it. When he gets back to the station, Dr. Bashir helps him both, professionally in a medical sense. He's got a counsellor. Cisco tries to look out for him. His wife's trying to help. All his loved ones rally around him and try and help him through it. So although it is really upsetting, that scene, and it's really poignant when that scene when O'Brien's thinking about killing himself, and then Julian comes in and manages to talk him around, it's the fact that he got through it. But however bleak you might feel, or however hopeless you might feel in a certain situation, that feeling isn't going to last forever. And although it's really hard, when you feel that low, you can't see the end point. You can't see how you can get out of it. But so now, whenever I feel low, and I have felt low since, I just I remind myself, this is temporary. I will get through this. I'm not always going to feel like this. Just like O'Brien did. He got through his hopelessness and he survived. So yeah, although there's a really sad element to why this is meaningful, but there's also a hopeful and uplifting reason why this is a really meaningful episode to me.
So it sounds to me like Star Trek helped you through some really dark times in your life, Rob.
It really did. And I know that's a very common thing. A lot of people say that. So it does feel like a bit of a cliche, but it really did, if not save my life, I think it has really improved my life and made me happier, made me be able to help me deal with some really difficult things in my life. And at the very least, it's introduced me to people that are really the best bunch of people in the world, that they're just so kind and generous and understanding. Star Trek fans are just, they're the best sort of people. They just want to help each other. They want to be there for each other. They're, generally very kind, supportive people. And I'm just really glad to be part of that community.
I suspect that a lot of Star Trek fans know what it is to be the outsider, or to be in a dark place, or to not be part of the in-group. And so having that in our lives, we're very aware of that when it's happening to other people. And you can't be I've said this before, and I'm sure my 5 or 6 listeners are sick of hearing it, but you can't be a pessimist about humanity and be a Star Trek fan. A long-term pessimist, maybe a short-term pessimist, but you can't think that we're on the path to the Blade Runner dystopian future and be a Star Trek fan, right? I mean, the whole point of it is that we get to this place where life is better for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Rob, I have to tell you, I've enjoyed our conversation.
I've really enjoyed it, yeah.
I've enjoyed talking with you. The M5 is signaling me that it is time for the Kobayashi Maru simulation. The Kobayashi Maru is a challenging and difficult test, cunningly prepared by the M5. Should you not only survive the test, but pass it as well, the M5 will award you an honorary Star Trek title. Are you ready, Rob Chapman?
I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be.
M5, load the Kobayashi Maru simulation and prepare to record Rob's responses.
Simulation loaded and ready.
Question 1. Choose your Starfleet cosplay, the Season 1 TNG jumper or Star Trek the Motion Picture.
Star Trek TNG Season 1.
Which episode is better suited as an instrument of torture, Prophet and Lace or Sub Rosa?
Sub Rosa.
Choose your first assignment, cadet. You can be an orderly on the Tantalus 5 penal colony or assistant to the Federation ambassador on Nimbus 3.
Assistant to the Federation ambassador.
Time to start your day. Will it be some delightful Cardassian hot fish juice or that Ferengi classic millipede juice with the shells, of course?
Oh, fish juice sounds disgusting. Millipede.
Which would be the worst thing to discover on beaming down to a planet? 1. A kettle full of omega molecules, or 2. A gaggle of armises with especially bad attitudes.
The omega molecules.
Simulation complete. M5, please compute the results.
Analyzing.
Those are some good picks, my man. I'm surprised you picked. Why'd you pick Sub Rosa over Prophet and Lace?
Sub Rosa's been stuck in my head since Destination Star Trek last year, where a group of my friends cosplayed as Beverly in her pink nightie, and they it was, and they had there was someone cosplay as the gravestone, and they had the little candle, and
Didn't like the candle.
It's just in my head. It's such a horrendous episode.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll be curious to see on Twitter whether or not people select the Tantalus 5 penal colony or Nimbus 3. You remember Nimbus 3?
Yes, yeah.
All right, but I bet you haven't seen Tantalus 5 yet, though, or have you?
Don't think so.
It's from a TOS episode where it's the penal colony, and Kirk has to beam down, and the bad guy swaps places with him, and he's trying to beam back to the ship, but he doesn't know the password. So it's all about what happens on the planet, and it's a classic of TOS for sure. Not a good place. Not a good place. All right. M5, please tell me if our guest has passed the Kobayashi Maru.
Information posted.
Rob, I am pleased to tell you that the M5 has determined that you have passed the Kobayashi Maru simulation. Congratulations, my man.
Yeah.
And now, the M5, who has analyzed your answers, will award you an honorary Star Trek title on behalf of our podcast. M5, what title shall we award our guest?
Rob is awarded the title of Chief Architect of Starbase Construction for Starfleet Command.
So there you go.
Hey. Not bad.
You get to design all the starbases. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'll have that.
Yeah. Rob, please tell people how they can get in touch with you.
So people can get in touch with me on Twitter. I'm at TrekkyRob, and I'm also I run a Trek Book Club on Twitter. So I'm at Trek Book Club. So either of those.
Rob, thank you so much for being part of the Trek Profiles podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had a wonderful time. Really appreciate it.
Here ends this installment of the Trek Profiles podcast. And before we offer a Trek quote to close this episode, I'd like to remind you that you may send us your helpful ideas, your pleas to make the show stop, or your very best Pakled love ballads to feedback@trekprofiles.com or on Facebook or Twitter @TrekProfiles. Anything you send us may be used in the show, or it may be fed to Control to see if it achieves sentience. This week, I leave you with a quote from Edith Keeler, who in the episode The City on the Edge of Forever said, quote, "A lie is a very poor way to say hello," unquote. Thanks for listening, and live long and prosper.